and welcome to Campaign Chronicles. With just 18 weeks to go until the first round of voting, this is France 24's regular update on what's happening ahead of the French presidential election. Coming up in today's programme. Suave and sophisticated, a new presidential wannabe has the charisma, but does he have the votes? Well, that comes as President Sarkozy's camp fears a splintering of right-wing votes. And Faces and Places finds out how promises to protect purchasing power have in fact failed. We begin though with a roundup of the week's main news.
Made in France, part slogan, and now part bandwagon. First centrist François Bayrou put it at the heart of his manifesto. Then Nicolas Sarkozy visited this world-famous French alpine ski factory this week. Both socialists and conservatives want to nuance their position from the far-right's protectionist stance. Rather than buy French products, they want to promote French industry, as well as wooing industrial voters. Meanwhile, the Socialist Party is still torn between its official campaign promises and their candidate's version. The latest misunderstanding turning back the clock on pensions reform. The party has already promised to roll back the government's programme, but François Hollande says he won't go that far. Only some people will be able to retire at 60. According to the ruling UMP, though, that is electoral dishonesty. From a simmering disagreement to a row that's boiled over. Rachida Dati, a one-time ally of President Sarkozy, has been furious for weeks. She wants a seat in Parliament for a chic Parisian area. That's where she's already mayor. But the constituency has also been promised to Prime Minister François Fillon. She published an open letter this week accusing him of elitism and sexism. The problem, though, is that she's pretty isolated. The President and most Conservative MPs back the PM, while one poll puts her 30 points behind. A double objective this week for the far-right Front National. The party sent its number 2, Louis Alliot, to Israel. That to increase the FN's international image and also repudiate the long-standing reputation as a bastion for anti-Semitism. But the Israeli state refused any official recognition of the visit. Party boss Marine Le Pen still isn't welcome there due to the shadow cast by her father's speeches. But it was a chance to talk to voters in what could be a sensitive overseas voting area, as the FN reckons its anti-Islamist stance strikes a chord.
Well, next up, he's considered to be handsome and well-spoken. He's certainly well-known. Dominique de Villepin now also wants to be French president. The former Prime Minister's candidacy adds yet more confusion to the race. He's the 16th serious contender, much to the displeasure of many former right-wing allies.
Dominique de Villepin is perhaps most famous for one thing.
France, coming from the old continent, can speak from experience. We have been through war, through occupation and through barbarism.
In 2003, his eloquent speech at the UN against the invasion of Iraq drew international acclaim. Now, though, he wants to be president. Lofty ambitions for a man who's never even held elected office, as he himself admits.
My career hasn't been that of a professional politician.
His entry into the race putting him on collision course with the current incumbent Nicolas Sarkozy. It's not the first time their rivalry has made the news. The pair originally fell out while serving in Jacques Chirac's government. It's an enmity that has endured. Many see the long-running Clearstream case as a personal vendetta played out in the courts. Despite those distractions, Dominique de Villepin still reckons he's the man to solve France's current ills.
Je suis candidat parce que j'ai une conviction.
I'm a candidate because I have a belief. People have to come together in times of crisis and hardship. By that I mean all French people, not just from the left or the right or from the centre, but all French people.
Transcending the political divide then, and perhaps most importantly proving his political capital isn't a bargaining chip.
I say it very clearly here, my programme does not include joining forces with other candidates.
He's in for the long run then, at least in theory, even if that means standing alone. The problem, though, is that his political friends are increasingly rare. Some allies have turned their backs on him. They reckon his candidacy risks splitting the Conservative vote.
I believe that his natural place is at the heart of the president's ruling majority, in support of the government that fights every day to support the president.
Villepin, though, clearly disagrees. Perhaps stubbornly going it alone harks back to his greatest moment and the belief that he was right to oppose war in Iraq. But unfortunately for Villepin, his international prestige has never really translated into domestic credibility. His poll figures are closer to the marginal candidates, demonstration that global recognition isn't the only thing required to run for president.
Well, I'm joined now by Campaign Chronicles resident reporter Luke Brown. And Luke, some rather ironic responses to Villepin's presidential bid on Twitter.
Yes, on Twitter, especially from his predecessor as Prime Minister, Jean-Pierre Raffarin, who tried a bit of a poetic response, questioning his motivation, really, if we can take a look there. Villepin's candidacy, a rush of blood, a bluff, an impulse, or a low blow. Basically, he's asking him, is it really a serious candidacy, as he doesn't really have much in the polls, or does he perhaps want something in a future government? It is worth noting, though, Raffarin is a bit of a maverick. He does like to shoot his mouth off on Twitter, so perhaps worth following him.
All right, Villepin's number 16. We're getting the impression that there are quite a few presidential candidates coming out, nowhere more so, really, than on the right.
Quite correct there. We can take a look at a graphic that we have prepared. We can see there are a total of 8 candidates in the solar system around Nicolas Sarkozy. Basically, that includes everyone from the centrists to the far right, passing via some pretty small candidates representing hunters and fishermen. That's Frédéric Nihus. It is something of a bit of bad news for Nicolas Sarkozy. He spent a lot of time and energy trying to convince many of those people not to run. We did know that he was meeting with Dominique de Villepin in the past weeks and months. We actually thought Villepin would be announcing that he wouldn't be running. That has not turned out to be the case. Nicolas Sarkozy has only really succeeded in pressurising one person to drop out, and that was Jean-Louis Borloo back in the autumn. And as such, any electoral boost that he got from that has since dissipated.
So what kind of effect could this have on Sarkozy?
Well, the real big concern on both sides is a repeat of the 2002 effect in reverse for the Conservatives. Back in 2002, the far-right Front National, they won through to the second round, knocking out the Socialist Party. This time, the Conservatives are worried that they could be the victims. After all, if you look at all those small candidates, in fact, their poll numbers add up to about 14%. Back in 2002, it only needed less than 1% to knock them out, so a very tiny margin there. Historically, of course, Nicolas Sarkozy's victory back in 2005 was a lot to do with the way that he succeeded in uniting the various different currents within the right-hand politics and put them in within his own UMP party. It's not going to be so easy to do that this time. The real question is he going to be leaning more towards the centre or more towards the extremities? And that's something of a riddle that we don't have the answer for yet, and nor perhaps does he.
Luke Brown, thank you very much indeed. Well, it's time now for Faces and Places, our weekly rendezvous with French voters. This week, we're headed for Alexandre's hairdressing salon in Nîmes. His close relation to his customers means he knows what worries them. What he sees is that despite presidential promises to protect their purchasing power, French people have less and less cash in their pockets.
Donc on part sur ce qu'on a dit. Oui. Hein? Je vais redégrader. Pour donner un max de volume, de façon à ce que
Alexandre is a hairdresser who likes to take his time and really take care of his customers. That's why after 8 years of working for renowned hairdressers between Paris and Nîmes, he decided to open his own salon. Here, Alexandre is very much more than just a hairdresser.
On a quand même un rôle de confident.
We play the role of a confidant, and often a friendship develops with the customer as the months go by.
Alexandre opened his salon 6 years ago in the centre of Nîmes. Business is good, but there are taxes to pay, and he only earns €1,000 a month, despite working more than 50 hours a week, and even more once the shop is closed.
That's when my job as a proprietor begins, but also as accountant, as manager, and then we're talking about banks, doing the accounts and all that. That's what comes after. So after a long day of hard work, then you have to deal with all the administrative stuff.
Every evening, Alexandre also picks up his boyfriend Hugo at the station. Hugo is a hairdresser as well. He works in a salon in Montpellier. They've been dating each other for a year, but how presidential candidates view gay marriage or adoption doesn't really matter to Alexandre when he casts his vote.
Voilà, s'il y a vraiment moyen de changer les choses et de faire évoluer les choses,
That's not my priority. That's not what I first look for when I see a candidate's program. I don't look at those
Je vais pas
things.
regarder ces causes-là, quoi. Vraiment pas.
So what is important?
Ça va être, moi, plus vis-à-vis
First
de
comes
mon
my
entreprise.
company, then, as
D'abord.
most French people would say,
Après, ça va être
purchasing
la
power,
plupart des Français,
housing,
le pouvoir d'achat, ça va être le logement,
and security.
ça va être l'insécurité. On y va. Allez.
In the eyes of Alexandre, the most worrying issue right now is the fall in purchasing power.
Parce que on le voit très bien.
You can see a very
maintenant,
clear
que le
drop.
pouvoir d'achat a baissé,
Customers
on voit
are
très bien que
spacing
nous, les clients
appointments
au salon,
out.
espacent leur rendez-vous. C'est fini.
The time when you would see the same person every week, that's over. You see this less and less. Now it's once a month and people discuss prices. They don't negotiate, but they ask about prices before the service is done. These are things you didn't see in the job 10 years ago.
But Alexandre is not a man who complains. In order to ease his worries, he writes everything down. In fact, writing has become his outlet. He's currently finishing his second collection of short stories.
Well, that's all for this week from Campaign Chronicles. Don't forget to check out the show's Facebook page and tell us what you think. And of course, the programme is back again next week. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.